The Apache beauty's dress was torn. The rancher took off his coat and said, "You're safe now." The sun was already high when the rancher started his day, the way he always did. He woke before the heat settled over the land, before the wind stopped moving through the grass. Life on the ranch followed a rhythm he trusted. Feed the horses, check the fences, walk the edge of the property where the land slowly blended into the hills that bordered Apache territory. He did not rush. He never had to. Out here, rushing only led to mistakes. He had lived on this land for many years, long enough to know the sound of the earth under his boots, long enough to tell the difference between the call of a hawk and the warning cry of something disturbed. People in nearby towns knew him as quiet, steady, and fair. He did not talk much, but when he did, his words mattered. He respected the land, and he respected the people who had lived beside it long before he ever arrived. That afternoon felt no different at first. The sky was clear, wide, and endless. The horses were calm, grazing near the fence. The wind carried the smell of dry grass and dust. The rancher was repairing a loose post near the road, his hands rough and practiced, when something felt wrong. It was not a sound at first. It was a feeling, the kind that makes the back of your neck tighten. Then he heard it. Footsteps, not slow, not steady, fast and uneven, as if someone was running without caring where they stepped. He straightened and turned toward the trees lining the dirt road. The bushes moved sharply, branches snapping under hurried movement. A moment later, someone stumbled into view. It was a young woman. She stopped at the edge of the road, breathing hard, her chest rising and falling too fast. Her dark hair was loose and tangled, strands sticking to her face. Her dress was torn along the side, the fabric pulled and dirt-stained, as if it had caught on branches while she ran. Her eyes were wide, scanning the land behind her, then the road, then him. Fear was written clearly across her face. Not loud fear, not dramatic fear. The quiet kind that sits deep in the eyes and does not leave easily. The rancher did not move right away. He knew better than to rush someone already frightened. He kept his hands where she could see them and took one slow step forward, then stopped. The woman flinched at the movement but did not run. That alone told him how exhausted she was. She was Apache. He could tell by the small details, the way she carried herself even in fear, the beaded bracelet still clinging to her wrist, the symbols stitched faintly into the fabric of her dress. She did not look like someone who belonged on the open road alone. She looked like someone who had been forced into it. The rancher felt a quiet anger rise in his chest, not sharp, not loud, but solid and heavy. He did not know what had happened to her. He did not need to. He only knew that she was scared, hurt, and standing alone. "It's all right," he said, keeping his voice low and calm. "You're not in trouble." She did not answer. Her lips parted as if she wanted to speak, but no sound came out. Her hands trembled slightly at her sides. The wind picked up, lifting the torn edge of her dress, and she instinctively crossed her arms, trying to cover herself. That was when he understood something important. Fear was only part of what she was feeling. The rest was shame, the kind that comes when dignity feels stripped away along with safety. Without thinking too hard about it, he reached for the buttons of his coat. He moved slowly, deliberately, making sure she saw every motion. He slipped the coat off his shoulders and held it out in front of him, not stepping closer, not forcing it on her. "You can take this," he said gently. "It's clean." For a moment, she just stared at the coat. Then she looked up at him again, searching his face. The rancher met her gaze without flinching. There was no demand in his eyes, no curiosity that crossed into judgment, just concern. She took one careful step forward, then another. When she reached the coat, her fingers hesitated before closing around the thick fabric. As soon as she wrapped it around herself, her shoulders relaxed just a little. The coat was too big for her, the sleeves hanging past her hands, but it covered the torn places and shielded her from the wind. He spoke again, his voice steady. "You're safe now." Those words landed differently than any others could have. She swallowed hard, her eyes filling with tears she had clearly been holding back for a long time. She did not cry loudly. She did not collapse. She simply closed her eyes for a brief second, as if allowing herself to believe him. The rancher stepped back, giving her space. He leaned against the fence post, making himself look less like a threat and more like part of the land itself. Silence stretched between them, but it was not uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that lets breathing slow and thoughts settle. After a while, she sat down carefully on a flat rock near the road, still clutching the coat around her. Her hands had stopped shaking, but her eyes kept drifting toward the trees behind her. The rancher followed her gaze, scanning the area without turning his head too much. He saw nothing out of place. No movement, no sound except the wind. "You want some water?" he asked. She nodded slightly. He walked to his truck, retrieved a bottle, and placed it on the ground a few feet from her before stepping back again. She picked it up with both hands and drank slowly, as if afraid it might disappear if she rushed. He did not ask her what had happened. Not yet. He knew that questions could feel like pressure, and pressure could break the fragile calm that had settled between them. Minutes passed. The sun shifted. The horses lifted their heads, then returned to grazing. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't know where else to go." "That's all right," he replied. "You came to the right place." She looked at him again, studying him the way someone studies a bridge before stepping onto it. "You don't know me," he nodded. "No, but I know fear. And I know when someone needs help." Her fingers tightened around the coat. "They followed me," she said quietly. He did not ask who. He did not ask why. He simply said, "They're not here now." The road remained empty. The land held its breath. Inside, the rancher knew that this moment mattered, not just for her but for him. He had chosen to step into something that could not be undone. Whatever came next, he would face it the same way he faced the land itself, steady, respectful, and without turning away. As the sun dipped slightly lower, casting longer shadows across the dirt road, the woman sat wrapped in his coat, breathing more evenly. And the rancher stood nearby, watching the horizon, already committed to protecting a stranger whose life had crossed his path on an ordinary day that was no longer ordinary at all. The rancher stayed where he was, close enough to watch over her but far enough to give her space. He understood that safety was not only about distance from danger, it was also about control. After everything she had been through, she needed to feel that she still had choices. The woman sat quietly for a long time. She held the bottle of water in her hands even after she finished drinking, as if it grounded her. The coat wrapped around her felt heavy and warm, carrying the smell of dust, leather, and sun. It reminded her that someone had stepped in without asking for anything in return. The rancher finally broke the silence. "My name is Daniel," he said. He did not expect her to answer. He only wanted to give her something solid, something real. After a pause, she nodded once. "Yana," she replied softly. He repeated her name slowly, making sure he said it right. She noticed that. It mattered more than she expected. The wind shifted again, and distant clouds began to gather low on the horizon. Daniel glanced at the sky, then back at her. "There's shade by the barn," he said. "If you want, we can walk there, or we can stay right here. It's your choice." She considered his words carefully. No one had asked her what she wanted in a long time. Finally, she stood, keeping the coat tight around her. Her legs were shaky, but she stayed upright. They walked slowly toward the barn, side by side but not too close. Daniel kept his eyes forward, aware of her presence without crowding her. The barn was old but well kept, its wide doors open to let air flow through. Inside, it was cooler. Dust floated lazily in the light. She sat on a wooden bench near the entrance where she could still see the road. Daniel leaned against a support beam, arms crossed loosely. He watched the land, listening. Yana spoke again, her voice steadier now. "I didn't mean to cause trouble." Daniel turned to her. "You didn't," he said simply. She let out a small breath she hadn't realized she was holding. I was supposed to meet my aunt near the trading post, she explained. I took the long way because I wanted to be alone. I didn't know someone was watching. Her words came slowly, carefully chosen. Daniel listened without interrupting. He did not push for details. He knew that reliving fear could reopen it. I ran when I realized, she continued. I didn't stop until my legs wouldn't move anymore. Daniel nodded. You did what you had to do. Her eyes flicked up to his face. You don't think I was foolish? No, he replied without hesitation. I think you were brave. That word caught her off guard. She looked down at her hands, twisting the edge of the coat. I didn't feel brave. Most people don't, Daniel said. Doesn't mean they are. Another silence settled, lighter this time. Outside, one of the horses let out a soft sound and Ayanna startled before relaxing again. Daniel noticed and spoke calmly. That's just the mare. She's gentle. Ayanna nodded. I grew up around horses, she said. They know when someone's afraid. Daniel smiled faintly. So do people sometimes. As the afternoon wore on, Daniel brought her a small plate of food, bread, fruit, nothing fancy. He set it down without comment and stepped away. She ate slowly, each bite easing the tightness in her chest. Thank you, she said quietly. You're welcome. After a while, she asked, what will you do if they come back? Daniel did not answer right away. He chose his words carefully. I'll make sure you're not alone, he said, and I'll do what's right. She studied his face again, searching for doubt. She found none. The sun dipped lower and the light softened. Ayanna stood and walked toward the open barn door, looking out at the land. I didn't think anyone would help, she admitted. Most people look away. Daniel joined her, standing a respectful distance apart. Some do, he said. Some don't. She wrapped the coat tighter around herself. Why didn't you? He thought for a moment. Because someone once did the same for me. She turned to him, curious. He did not explain further and she did not ask. Some stories were not meant for sharing yet. A distant engine sound reached them both. Ayanna stiffened, fear returning to her eyes. Daniel placed himself slightly in front of her without touching her. The sound grew closer, then passed on the main road without slowing. Her shoulders sagged with relief. They're gone, Daniel said calmly. As evening approached, Daniel knew decisions had to be made. I can take you to your family, he offered, or I can call someone you trust, whatever feels safest. She thought for a long moment. My aunt, she said. She'll worry. Daniel nodded. Then we'll call her. They used his phone, and when Ayanna heard her aunt's voice, her strength finally gave way. She did not cry loudly. Tears slipped down her face as she spoke, her words tumbling over each other. Daniel stepped outside, giving her privacy while staying close enough to help if needed. When she finished the call, she looked lighter, though exhaustion still clung to her. She's coming, Ayanna said. She said to stay with you. Daniel nodded. You're welcome to stay here until she arrives. They waited together as the sky darkened. The first stars appeared. Ayanna sat on the bench again, calmer now, the worst of the fear behind her. She looked at Daniel. I won't forget this, she said. What you did. He shook his head slightly. Just focus on getting home safe. Headlights appeared in the distance. Ayanna stood, clutching the coat once more. As her aunt's truck pulled in, Daniel watched from a distance. The reunion was quiet but full of relief. Before leaving, Ayanna walked back to him and held out the coat. I'll bring it back, she said. Daniel smiled gently. No rush. She hesitated, then said, You kept your word. So did you, he replied. As the truck drove away, Daniel stood alone by the barn, watching the dust settle. The land returned to its quiet rhythm, but he knew something had changed. He had stepped into another person's fear and helped turn it into safety. And sometimes, that single choice was enough to echo far beyond one evening on a quiet road. The next morning arrived quietly, as if the land itself wanted to give everyone time to breathe. The sky was pale blue, and the air was cooler than the day before. Daniel woke early, though he had barely slept. His mind kept returning to the look in Ayana's eyes when she first appeared on the road, fear mixed with determination, weakness mixed with strength. Some moments stayed with a person, no matter how hard they tried to set them aside. He went about his routine as usual. He fed the horses, checked the water troughs, and walked the fence line. Everything looked normal, yet nothing felt the same. He found himself listening more closely to every sound, watching the road more often than before. It was not worry exactly, it was awareness. By mid-morning, a familiar truck appeared in the distance, moving slowly along the dirt road. Daniel recognized it before it reached the gate. It belonged to Ayana's aunt. He waited by the fence as the truck stopped. Yana stepped out first. She looked different today. Her hair was neatly braided and she wore a clean dress. Yet something in her expression told him that the calm was still new and fragile. She walked toward him, holding something folded over her arm. "You came back," Daniel said. "I told you I would," she replied. She held out his coat. It was clean, carefully folded. He took it but did not put it on right away. "Thank you," he said. She nodded, then hesitated. "My aunt wanted to thank you too." The older woman approached, her face serious but warm. She spoke with quiet strength, her words full of gratitude and respect. Daniel listened, uncomfortable with praise but accepting it politely. When she finished, she placed her hand over her heart in a traditional gesture before returning to the truck. Ayana did not leave right away. "I wanted to see the horses," she said. Daniel smiled faintly. "They're calmer in the morning." They walked together toward the corral. This time the distance between them felt natural, not careful. One of the horses lifted its head as they approached, ears forward, curious. "She knows you," Ayana said softly. Daniel glanced at her. "She knows calm," he replied. Yana reached out slowly, letting the horse sniff her hand before touching its neck. The animal relaxed under her palm. For the first time since arriving, Ayana smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes. "They don't judge," she said. "They just feel." Daniel watched her for a moment. People could learn from that. They stood in silence for a while, listening to the soft sounds of the ranch. Finally, Ayana spoke again. "What happened didn't end when I left yesterday," she said. "It stays with you." Daniel nodded. "Fear has a way of lingering. I keep replaying it," she admitted. "What I should have done differently." Daniel leaned against the fence. "You survived," he said. "That's what matters." She looked at him, searching his face. "It helps hearing that from someone who doesn't belong to my world." Daniel met her gaze. Sometimes an outside voice sees things more clearly. They talked for a long time, not about what had happened in detail, but about life, about the land, about how quiet places could hold both peace and danger. Daniel spoke of the ranch, how it had taught him patience and humility. Ayana spoke of her community, of traditions passed down through stories and silence. At one point, she said, "People think strength looks loud." Daniel smiled slightly. "It's usually quiet." As the sun climbed higher, a truck approached again, this time unfamiliar. Daniel noticed it first. His posture changed, subtle but firm. Yana felt it and turned, tension returning to her shoulders. The truck slowed near the gate. Two men stepped out, dressed plainly but carrying an air of authority. They introduced themselves calmly, explaining that they were checking on reports from the previous day. Daniel listened carefully. He did not raise his voice. He did not accuse. He simply stated what he had seen and what he had done. His words were clear and steady. Ayana stood beside him, not behind him. When the men asked if she was willing to speak, Daniel looked at her. "It's your choice," he said quietly. She took a breath. "I'll answer what I can." She spoke simply, without emotion, just facts. Her voice did not shake. Daniel could see the effort it took, but also the strength it built. When she finished, the men nodded respectfully. "We'll take it from here," one of them said. As the truck drove away, Yana let out a slow breath. "That was harder than running," she admitted. Daniel looked at her. "But you stood your ground," she nodded. "I didn't feel alone." That mattered more than anything. Later, as afternoon settled in, Ayanna prepared to leave again. This time she looked steadier. Not healed, healing took time, but stronger. Before she left, she turned to Daniel. "What you did," she said, "it changed how I see things, not just people like you, myself." Daniel shook his head gently. "You already had what you needed," she smiled. "Maybe, but you reminded me." She paused, then added, "If you ever come near our land, you'll be welcome." Daniel nodded. "Thank you." As she left, Daniel watched until the truck disappeared down the road. The ranch returned to its quiet state, but the silence felt different now. It felt fuller. That evening, Daniel sat on the porch, watching the sun set. He thought about how easily life could cross paths, how one moment could tie two strangers together without warning. He had not planned to be anyone's shelter that day. He had simply chosen not to look away. And sometimes that choice was enough to change the weight a person carried forward. The land grew dark, stars emerging one by one. Daniel pulled his coat around his shoulders, feeling the familiar weight. It was more than warmth now. It was a reminder. Somewhere beyond the hills, Ayanna was returning to her world, carrying her own reminder. That safety could exist, that strength could be shared, and that kindness, once given, did not fade with distance. The road lay quiet between them, but the connection remained, steady and unspoken, like the land itself. Days passed, but the memory of what had happened did not fade for Daniel. Life on the ranch returned to its routine on the surface, yet something beneath it had shifted. He still woke before sunrise, still fed the horses and checked the fences, but now he listened more closely to the wind and watched the road with sharper attention. The land felt the same, yet he felt different within it. News traveled quietly in places like this. People did not rush to speak, but when they did, words carried weight. By the end of the week, Daniel noticed unfamiliar vehicles slowing near the road, drivers glancing toward the ranch before moving on. No one stopped, but the attention was there. He understood what it meant. When someone chose to stand up, even in a small way, others noticed. One afternoon, as the heat pressed down and the air stood still, Daniel was repairing a gate near the far edge of his property. The work was slow, deliberate. Sweat ran down his back, but he did not hurry. That was when he heard voices again. This time they were not rushed or panicked. They were sharp, controlled, and close. He straightened and turned toward the road. Two men stood just beyond the fence line. They were not from the area. Their clothes were neat, their posture stiff. They did not smile. Daniel did not step back. He rested one hand on the fence post and waited. "We're looking for information," one of the men said. His tone was polite but firm. "About something that happened here recently." Daniel met his gaze. "I already spoke to people about that. We just have a few more questions." Daniel nodded slowly. "You can ask." They did not step closer. They did not need to. Their presence carried pressure all on its own. "Did the woman stay here long?" the other man asked. "Long enough to be safe," Daniel replied. "Did anyone else see her?" Daniel thought carefully. "Just me." The men exchanged a glance. "You understand why we're asking?" "I do," Daniel said. "And I understand why I'm answering the way I am." The silence stretched. The men studied him, perhaps expecting fear or hesitation. They found neither. Daniel's calm was not defiance. It was certainty. Finally, the first man spoke again. "If you remember anything else, you should report it." Daniel nodded. "If I do, I will." They left without another word. Daniel watched them until they were gone, then returned to his work. His hands were steady, his breathing slow. But inside, he felt the weight of what had just happened. Standing still took as much courage as stepping forward. That evening, Daniel drove into town for supplies. The small store was quiet, as usual. A few people nodded at him as he passed. One older woman stopped him near the counter. "I heard you helped that Apache girl," she said softly. Daniel shifted uncomfortably. "I helped someone who needed it," she nodded. "That matters." Outside, as he loaded his truck, he noticed another vehicle parked across the street. The driver watched him openly. Daniel met the stare, then calmly finished his task and drove away. He did not speed up. He did not look back. Back at the ranch, the sky darkened earlier than usual as clouds rolled in. A storm was coming. The wind picked up, rattling the barn doors. Daniel secured what he could, then stood on the porch as the first drops of rain fell. His phone buzzed. It was a message from Ayana's aunt. She wrote simply, thanking him again and letting him know that Ayana had been quiet but stronger each day. She said that support from the community had grown and that people were standing closer together now. Daniel read the message twice. He felt a slow sense of relief settle in his chest. As the rain began to fall harder, headlights appeared on the road. Daniel's body tensed without his permission. He watched as the vehicle slowed, then turned into his drive. It was not unfamiliar this time. Yana stepped out when the truck stopped. She wore a jacket now, her hair tied back. Rain dotted her shoulders, but her posture was straight. Daniel walked down from the porch to meet her. "Everything all right?" he asked. "Yes," she said. I needed to come." They stood under the edge of the porch as rain fell steadily around them. "Things are changing," Yana said. "People are talking. Some are angry, some are afraid." Daniel nodded. "Change usually brings both." She looked out at the rain. "I didn't expect my life to become louder." Daniel considered that. "Loud doesn't always last," he said. "What stays is what you do next." She turned to him. "That's why I'm here. I didn't want you to hear things secondhand." He appreciated that. "I'm glad you came." They sat on the porch, listening to the rain. Yana spoke about meetings, about voices rising and falling, about the weight of being seen when all she wanted at first was to disappear. Daniel listened, saying little, offering no advice unless asked. At one point she said quietly, "I was afraid you'd regret helping me." Daniel looked at her. "I don't." She studied his face, then nodded. "I needed to hear that." The storm passed slowly. When it ended, the world smelled clean, washed clear. Yana stood to leave. "They may come back," she said. "Not tonight, but someday." Daniel met her eyes. "Then I'll be ready." She smiled, small but real. "You already are." As her truck drove away, Daniel stood alone again, the road empty, the land quiet. But this quiet was not fragile, it was steady. In the days that followed, things settled. No more visits, no more watching eyes. The attention faded, replaced by something else, respect perhaps, or understanding. Daniel did not try to name it, he simply lived his life. Yet he knew something important had been tested and proven. Safety was not only about walls or distance, it was about people choosing not to step aside when it mattered. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in deep colors, Daniel leaned on the fence and watched the horses move calmly across the field. He felt tired, but it was a good tired, the kind that comes after standing firm. Far away, beyond the hills, Yana was walking her own path, carrying the strength she had reclaimed. And though the road between them was long and quiet, it no longer felt empty. Both had faced fear in their own way. Both had chosen to stand. And sometimes that choice was enough to change the shape of the future, one steady moment at a time. Time moved forward, steady and quiet, the way it always did on the land. The season began to change, bringing cooler nights and softer mornings. Daniel noticed it in the way the wind felt against his face and in the way the horses' coats grew thicker. Life did not pause for what had happened, but it did carry the memory gently, like a mark that never fully faded. Weeks passed without trouble. No unfamiliar vehicles slowed near the ranch. No voices rose on the road. The quiet returned, but this time it felt earned, not empty. Daniel settled back into his routine, though he knew now that routine did not mean indifference. It meant readiness. One morning, as the sun rose in pale gold light, Daniel received another message. It was from Ayana. She wrote that she had begun speaking to others in her community, not loudly, not with anger, but with honesty. She wrote that some days were heavy, but other days felt hopeful. She said she was learning that strength could exist alongside fear, not instead of it. Daniel read the message slowly, then set the phone down and looked out over the land. He felt something close to pride, though he would never have named it that. He had not saved her. He had not fixed anything. He had simply stood where he was needed. Later that day, Daniel drove into town again. This time, the nods he received felt different. A man at the feed store clapped him lightly on the shoulder. A woman thanked him quietly. Daniel accepted it all with the same calm he always carried, never correcting, never encouraging praise. That evening, as the sun dipped low, a familiar truck appeared once more on the road. Daniel watched it approach, already knowing. Yana stepped out carrying a small bundle wrapped in cloth. She looked more at ease now, not untouched by what had happened but no longer defined by it. She walked toward him with steady steps. "I brought something," she said. She unwrapped the cloth and revealed a simple handmade piece, carefully crafted, full of meaning. "It's a thank you," she explained. "Not for saving me, for seeing me." Daniel accepted it with both hands. "Thank you," he said quietly. They sat together on the porch as the evening cooled. This time the silence between them felt complete, not cautious. They spoke about ordinary things, weather, work, the land, life as it continued. Before she left, Ayana looked at him and said, "What happened to me no longer feels like the end of something. It feels like the beginning." Daniel nodded. Beginnings are often quiet. As her truck disappeared down the road, Daniel remained on the porch, watching the last light fade from the sky. He felt no need to follow, no fear of what might come next. The land rested around him, unchanged yet somehow richer. Daniel understood now that courage did not always roar. Sometimes it simply stayed, and that was enough.